and Twitter accounts. But luckily, Ben is doing a Skype speech for us, and he's going to do 30 minutes of speech and 30 minutes of questions. So the man you have been waiting for, the Ben Shapiro, he is editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com. He is an author of 6 books, including New York Times bestseller, Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences America. Shapiro is also a nationally syndicated columnist since the age of 17 and a graduate of UCLA and Harvard Law. He is the host of The Morning Answer on KRLA 870 in Los Angeles and KTIE 590 in Orange County. Shapiro has led the fight against boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel, America's campus, famously crashing UCLA's BDS hearing to single-handedly stop the vote against Jewish hatred. Glenn Beck calls Shapiro a warrior for conservatism against those who use fear and intimidation to stifle honest debate. I've never known him to back down from a fight. So without further ado, please welcome to the screen, Ben Shapiro.
All righty. Well, thank you all so much for having me, unfortunately from afar. Thanks to American Airlines for sucking more than any airline I thought it was possible for an airline to suck. It's time to make America Airlines great again. But I wanted to start by thanking, obviously, Turning Point USA, which I think is one of the best campus organizations in the country. Charlie Kirk, who's an absolute inspiration. I met Charlie a couple of years ago, which means he was 11 at the time. And Charlie has done unbelievable work on campus. I'm not a bigger fan of anybody else in American politics. I also want to thank some of the folks who are hashtagging Bring Ben today, Anna White and Heather Silva and Danny Barnitz and Heather Strandland for signing off on ripping on American Airlines. This makes me happy. I also want to point out in the audience, Pardis Sella, who I work with over at Daily Wire. Pardis, if you can stand up. So because I can't make it, and I know that there are a bunch of people who wanted to take pictures, and believe it or not, I didn't just avoid the flight so I'd have to take pictures next to you and then the Trump people could tweet how short I was. I actually couldn't make the flight, unfortunately. Pardis is going to be around. If you give Pardis your email address and your address, your mailing address, we'll send you a signed, personalized picture. So that way you at least get something out of this, even though I'm not here. Okay, so let's start by talking how you can fight back against the left on college campuses. I want to talk today about 7 of the most common slurs that you will hear on college campuses, because this is how it works on college campuses. There's no attempt at real debate. There's no attempt at real discussion. All there really is a bunch of slurs that are thrown at you, because when it comes to the left, all that really matters is their feeling of unearned moral superiority. It's all they care about. They're feeling that they are better than you are just as a human being. They're better human beings than you are because they're leftists. You're of the right, therefore you're a bad person. You're a bad person, and therefore you can be silenced. So what they do is they throw out these sort of hot-button terms in order to silence the debate, in order to stop the debate at the very outset. So I want to teach you how to deal with each of these in turn. Before I even start that, I want to say there are only a couple of reasons to get into a debate with somebody on the left in the first place. This is a crucial thing. The tendency of folks on the right is anytime there's somebody on the left, we must debate them. We must have a conversation. You don't have to. You don't have to. Just because someone wants to talk with you doesn't mean that you have to talk with them. Treat leftists like guy at a bar who's hitting on you who you're really not interested in talking to. Ignore him most of the time unless there's some ulterior motive. Okay, so when it comes to talking with leftists, there are only a couple reasons to do this. And one of those reasons is because you're in front of an audience. So all of these tactics work if you're in front of an audience. All these tactics are designed to win the argument in front of the audience. The other is if you're prepping yourself so that you can be a better argumentative, deliberative person when you actually get the opportunity to speak in front of an audience. So I always think about the audience first. And so when it comes to debate, I really don't care about the idea of convincing people on the left. All of this is going to be largely directed toward how to defeat the left in debate. If you want to have an honest conversation with somebody on the left, you first have to find an honest leftist, and that can take you the rest of your life. So I'm just going to assume that you're not going to be able to find anybody and you're debating somebody. Okay, that out of the way. The one that you're going to hear the most, of course, is that you are a racist, right? You're a racist. And the way they can tell that you're a racist is because you're somebody who doesn't believe that race matters. This is the way the left operates now. If you believe that skin color is arbitrary and doesn't make a difference to whether you're a good person or a bad person, if you believe the words of Martin Luther King rather than the early words of Malcolm X, this means that you are a racist. And what's more, the only people who truly can be racist in American society are white cisgender people, because white cisgender people are people in power. So what they've decided is that racism is a term that can only be used if you're at the top of the power structure. So if you're somebody who's at the top of the power structure, they can call you a racist. If you are a black person and you're a vicious racist, if you're Eric Holder and you're a vicious racist, you still can't be racist according to the left because you're black. You're not the person in power, even if you're the Attorney General of the United States, or in Barack Obama's case, the President of the United States. So somebody calls you a racist, and it usually has nothing to do with the argument. Usually you're talking about voter ID, and somebody just throws out, you're a racist. And your tendency, of course, is to be taken aback by this. Everybody's tendency is. It's the worst thing you can call somebody in American life is a racist. The proper response is not, no, I'm not a racist. Let me explain why I'm not a racist. The proper response instead is, no, you're the racist because you're the person who is suggesting that belief that race matters is an important thing, right? Anybody who believes that race matters, this is somebody in the absence of values, in the absence of good or bad, that is a person who by definition is a racist. And you're allowed to say that. You're allowed to say back to your opponent, no, you are a racist if without evidence you are suggesting that I'm a racist, because now you're making race the issue. I didn't make race the issue when I brought up voter ID, right? You made race the issue. Take voter ID as an example because the left loves this one. Whenever the left says things like voter ID, you stumping for voter ID makes you a racist, the proper response is, no, you're the racist because you think black people are too stupid to get a voter ID, right? Which is really their argument. Their argument is that only black people are incapable of getting a voter ID, which of course is absolute nonsense. It's absolutely false. It's not true. It's idiocy. It's idiocy. So you're a racist can only be countered. It can only be countered by being aggressive. It can never be countered by, well, I have black friends, or let me explain to you why I'm not a racist. The reason this doesn't work is if someone calls you a racist and you say, let's have a rational conversation about why I'm not a racist, you've already lost the argument. The reason you've already lost the argument is because you've now said to this person calling you a racist, the worst thing in American life, okay, well, you're a reasonable person and you're calling me a racist. Well, if it's a reasonable person calling you a racist, that means de facto you're a racist. So you can't allow it to go further than you're a racist. Either the conversation ends right there, I'm not going to hold the conversation with somebody who calls me a racist without evidence, or that person, you're the racist. Let's take this whole argument off the table. We can call each other racist all day long, although I actually have evidence you're a racist and you have no evidence I'm a racist. So take the argument off the table, mutually assured destruction. Okay, there's a counterpart to your racist argument. It's not an argument, the character attack of the left, and that is you're a sellout. So let's say that you're not a white cisgender male. Let's say that you are a minority, or if you're a woman, you're a majority, but let's say if you're a minority, what they say is you're a sellout. If you're a conservative black person, a conservative Jew, right? I'm a Jew, obviously. If you are a conservative woman, this makes you a sellout, right? This makes you a person who is turned against your own. And once again, the proper response here is, no, you're the racist or you're the sexist. Because only the left believes in an identity politics that matters so much that you're not allowed to disagree based on the fact that you have a certain color of skin or based on the fact that you have a certain set of genitalia, right? If they call you a sellout because you disagree with them, the answer to that should be, okay, wait a second. Why do all black people have to disagree with me? Why is it that all women are supposed to disagree with me? Why can't we have a diversity of viewpoint? Why should my genitals, why should my skin color dictate my viewpoint? You calling me a sellout just shows that you're a bigot because you think that all people who look like me have to think a certain way, which makes you a bigot. The third slur that you're going to hear a lot, and again, it's a corollary with the first two, is you're a beneficiary of white privilege. Now, this one is really irritating. The left says, hey, check your privilege, check your privilege. I've checked mine. It's just fine. It's in the car. I left it there a moment ago. They say you're a beneficiary of white privilege, right? You must have benefited from some evil, cruel system. Now, as we've said, the left is racist, and they make themselves feel good by saying that they stand for racial diversity rather than values. But the reality is that when they say you're a beneficiary of white privilege, what they really mean is that you are somehow benefiting from a system that is derived toward benefiting you. That you're the beneficiary of an evil system. What underlies this view? Well, the left believes in equality of outcome, what they call fairness. And if it turns out that one group of people with one skin color doesn't do as well as another group of people with another skin color, that must be because the group that's not doing as well has been sinned against. The left believes that freedom and liberty in America, and the idea of individualism, that we all make our own decisions and we bear the consequences, they think all of that is insufficient. If it were sufficient, we'd all end up in the same place, right? We don't. So the left looks at that and they say, okay, there's two people in a room, one with $5, one with $1. That means the guy with $5 must have benefited from an evil system, and the person with $1 must have been screwed by that system. This, of course, is absolute crap, but they push it. They say there must be some shadowy white privilege quashing people of other colors. This is why people of other colors supposedly don't do as well. They say that white privilege is inherent in everything, from capitalism to free speech. Any system that doesn't result in racial equality, meaning everybody, regardless of race, ends up with the same outcome. And more than race, regardless of action, ends up with the same outcome, that must be the result of white privilege. So they say, we need to tear down the system. We have to tear down this white privilege. And it's a pretty seductive idea, particularly for kids on campus. The campus left, simply, they give people a feeling of virtue by counting them as members of victimized identity groups. If you're an underachieving black woman, the left says, well, you're not underachieving because you're underachieving because the system hates blacks and females. If you're an underachieving gay Hispanic, you must be failing because the system targets people like you. For the people who are left, the white heterosexual cisgender males, the left will grant you conditional virtue. Or if you're a conservative woman, the left will grant you conditional virtue so long as you admit your guilt and make penance. So all you really have to do to please the left is simply say that I'm a beneficiary of white privilege, and really nothing that I've earned is earned, it's all given to me, and then all is forgiven. According to the campus left, the true bad guys in the world are all of these people, and the system was built to benefit them. The founding fathers designed a government economic system to protect their own evil interest at the expense of minorities everywhere. And this white privilege, of course, extends to every area of American life. It's inescapable. You're born into it. If you're white, you're born with a heavy burden on your back. They can never be alleviated if you're born non-white or non-straight or non-male, right? There's only one problem, of course, and none of this is true. And this is a substantive argument. When people say white privilege, you're a beneficiary of white privilege, your answer should be, okay, you need to name me the white privilege, right? You need to get specific. Because there's another reason generally that people fail and people succeed in America. Some people make better decisions than other people. And people who tend to hold fast to good decisions do better than others because of the values that they believe are good. Maybe equality of opportunity only exists so long as people are willing to take advantage of those opportunities, which is the truth, right? I mean, white privilege isn't reality. It's just a way to blame somebody else for your failures to live up to decent standards. This is harsh stuff to say to people. People get very uptight when you say maybe the lack of success in certain communities is due to social standards. Maybe your personal lack of success is because you made bad decisions. But here's the reality. Whites are not born with the genetic predisposition to doing the right thing. They're not born into an arbitrary moral system that only benefits white people. There are really three simple life rules that benefit everybody. Finish high school, get a job, get married before having babies. You do those things, you will not be permanently poor in the United States, according to the Brookings Institute, which is a leftist organization, the Brookings Institute. There's no such thing as generalized white privilege or institutional racism. Right? Name an institution and explain why it's racist. Is it your library? It's an institution. Is the building racist? Who's in the building that's racist? Right? If you say the university is racist, name the racist. Name the policy that's racist. You have to show me what institutional racism means. The left always likes to come up with these terms of art where they add a useless word in front of a meaningful word and then combine it to just mean leftism. So they'll say things like social justice. There's no such thing as social justice. There's just justice, right? And the fact is that because there's just justice, and the problem is because there's just justice, some people win and some people lose. So they come up with a term like social justice that's corrupt. They do the same thing with institutional racism. There is such a thing as racism. There are racist people who do racist things, right? But when they say institutional racism, what they're really saying is we don't have to find the racism. We don't have to find the person to blame. All we really have to do is just say something like institutional racism, and everybody just throws up their hands and we go home and we just assume you're right. So maybe it's not white privilege or institutional racism. Maybe it's values. Maybe this is reality. For example, it turns out the greatest privilege in American society is being born with two parents in the home. This is true for every race. The poverty rate among two-parent black families is 7%. The poverty rate among single-parent families, white single-parent families, is 22%. What happened? Where did the white privilege go? Where'd it go? I mean, they're white people. Don't they have the privilege? Well, it's gone because it turns out they made bad decisions and it doesn't work. The single greatest predictor for intergenerational poverty is single motherhood. White privilege is not responsible for black men making individual decisions to knock up their black girlfriends and then ditch them. That's individuals doing bad things. True also in the white community, true in the Hispanic community, true for everybody. You make bad decisions, bad stuff happens. That's not white privilege. That's reality. Okay. How about the not committing crimes privilege. This is one of my favorite ones. So the left likes to say it's white privilege. The fact that there are so many black people and Hispanic people in prison, that's white privilege. Well, that ain't real, okay? The higher criminality rate in the black community is not the result of evil white skin privilege. It's the result of individuals being criminals. Every time I hear about this vast number of black and brown people in prison, my question is, okay, which ones do you want to let out of jail? Right? Which ones are the non-criminals? Who are the innocents? Where's Tim Robbins? Where's the Shawshank Redemption moment? Right? Who are all these innocent people in prison that are just being rounded up for no reason? If you don't want to go to jail for murder, gang, as a black guy, here's an easy idea. Don't kill people. Here's the fact about that supposedly evil justice system. Here's the fact about the supposedly evil justice system. It actually under-prosecutes murder in minority communities because minority communities are under-policed. When police do come into contact with black people to take the horrible Black Lives Matter movement cause, police are less likely to kill black people than white people in the exact same circumstances, according to Professor Peter Moskos of John Jay College of Criminal Justice at CUNY. As early as 1994, the DOJ surveyed felony cases in the country's 75 largest urban areas, and they found lower felony prosecution rates for blacks than whites. In New York City, minorities keep running into cops because minorities keep committing crimes. From January to June 2008, 98% of all gun assailants in New York City were Hispanic or black. Stop and frisk actually under-targeted minorities. If there is white privilege, it's the fact that there are more police in white communities. There need to be more police in minority communities that lack law and order so that the law-abiding citizens there can live decent lives. How about pulling people over for speeding? You heard this one about white privilege, right? The driving while black routine. Well, it turns out that's nonsense too. The DOJ and New Jersey Attorney General, they commissioned a study in the 90s. They clocked the speed of all drivers after finding that police pulled over blacks disproportionately. And what they found is that black people sped disproportionately. Blacks were 25% of all the speeders, and there were 23% of drivers stopped for speeding. How about those sentencing disparities? You hear this one too, right? The crack and powder cocaine sentences. Oh my goodness, the white people do powder, the black people do crack, and the white people go to prison for less time. The reason for that is because crack is more effective, it's easier to distribute, and it's cheaper. The reason the sentencing disparity came about is because black legislators wanted it. They wanted to rid their area of drugs on the federal level. So, all of these privileges tend to fade into the mist the closer you look at them. And this is one of the problems, right? I mean, this is one of the problems with the argument for white privilege, is that they don't want you to look closely. They don't want you to make it clear. They don't want you to make clear what exactly they're talking about. Instead, they just want to throw out hot button terms and then just assume that everything is fine, right? They just want you to assume that everything works out the way it's supposed to work out because they've thrown out these terms and now we're supposed to feel good about ourselves. All right, so on to the next privilege. Not the next privilege, on to the next insult that the left likes to use. So this is the fourth insult. You're a homophobe, right? This one you hear a lot too. So you're a homophobe. If you don't support same-sex marriage, then you are the bad guy, right? If you don't support same-sex marriage, then you're the problem. So we saw this yesterday, not on college campus, but we saw this with Anderson Cooper. So there's this shooting in Orlando, and this shooting in Orlando happens, and Anderson Cooper goes on CNN with Pam Bondi, who's the Attorney General of the state of Florida. And Pam Bondi is trying to prosecute the terrorists who were involved. She's trying to bring resources to bear for the victims. And Anderson Cooper stands next to her and he says, "Why are you against the guy shooting people? You oppose same-sex marriage." And you should watch the exchange. It's really quite amazing. What's so amazing about this is the "you're a homophobe" argument suggests that if you don't support the gay agenda, then you must hate gay people or want to hurt gay people. The response to "you're a homophobe" is, no, you're a bigot and you don't understand logic, right? Because the fact is that there are plenty of good reasons not to support state-sponsored same-sex marriage. Now, my own perspective on same-sex marriage is that the state should get completely out of the business of marriage because the state sucks at everything. Right? The state tried to create incentives for traditional marriage, and the state failed, and so traditional marriage has obviously started to erode. And then they came in and they said, okay, now we'll sponsor same-sex marriage. The reason I want the state out is not because I think same-sex marriage is a good idea on a social level. It's because once you give the state the power to cram down their vision, the next thing that's going to happen is the state is going to insist that religious people all across the country be forced to accept same-sex marriages in their religious schools and perform them in their churches. They're going to get rid of charitable status for religious organizations. That's why I don't want the state involved. But that doesn't mean there's not a rational argument for opposing same-sex marriage. The rational argument for opposing same-sex marriage is very simple. Society has no interest in two dudes or two ladies having sex. Doesn't. Society has no interest in that. Society doesn't have an interest, by the way, in a man and a woman having sex, except if they're in a relationship that produces children, which is what marriage was designed to do. Marriage was designed to produce family unions with natural children born into them. That's why society has an interest in traditional marriage. That doesn't exist in any other way. And so that doesn't make me a homophobe. I don't really care what you do in the privacy of your own bedroom. I mean, I don't think anybody really cares what you do in the privacy of your own bedroom. In fact, I'm sick of hearing about what you do in the privacy of your own bedroom. But what we keep hearing is that if you are somebody who doesn't support same-sex marriage, you must be a bad guy, you must be homophobic. The proper response to this is, if you deeply care what I think of homosexuality, first of all, I don't know why you don't have something better to do with your day. I mean, I'm a religious person. I can think homosexuality is a sin. You're not a religious person. You can think I'm an idiot. Welcome to America, where we disagree. You know, the fact that I think that everybody has equal rights under the law, that should be enough for anyone. This is something the left doesn't understand because they're into identity politics, is I can believe that there is a right to behave in a way I disagree with, and I will stand for your right to behave in that way against people who would violate those rights. The left doesn't believe that. The left believes only activity the left likes is approved, and only the activity the left likes is okay, which is why the left is fascistic, right? The left will say that religious day schools have to accept same-sex partners teaching on their campuses, or nuns have to cover contraceptives. But if a religious baker doesn't want to participate in a same-sex wedding, then that person is a bigot and a racist and a fascist. All right. The next insult that you're going to hear a lot, of course, is "you're Islamophobic." So this is the dumbest of all of the insults, the "you're Islamophobic" routine. If by Islamophobic you mean I'm very frightened of radical Muslims who want to kill me and my family, I suppose you're correct. I suppose that makes me Islamophobic. I'm not scared of the religion of Islam. I'm not scared of people who pray 5 times a day toward Mecca. I have nothing to say about that. I pray 3 times a day toward Jerusalem, right? I mean, there's nothing to say there. But when it comes to the argument that I'm Islamophobic because I oppose radical Islamic terror, that's because you are stupid. And the reason the left likes to say you're Islamophobic, the reason they like to say you're Islamophobic is because for the left truly believes, Marxist philosophy believes, I wrote this in National Review today, Marxist philosophy believes that what actually drives human beings, individual human beings, what drives us is not deep-seated need to find what creates the universe and to find meaning in life. What drives us is simple things like, what do we eat tomorrow? And do we have a house? And do we have stuff? And because the left believes that's all that has to be rectified in order for everybody to be happy-dappy-do, they believe that philosophy can be put off to the side. So they won't say radical Islam, because if they say radical Islam, they're acknowledging that redistributionism, right, material redistributionism, President Obama's global redistributionist scheme, right, they're saying that won't be sufficient because it turns out you can still give people all the material things in life, all the good things in life, and they still might want to kill you. Okay, I actually have respect for religious people across the spectrum, including people who are religious extremists and do terrible, horrible things. And when I say respect, I don't mean that I respect their values. What I am saying is I have enough respect for them as human beings to assume they can't be bought off with a cheeseburger. I don't think that they can be bought off by saying that ISIS needs jobs. So you're Islamophobic is a cop-out. It's a cop-out. I'm definitely scared of radical Islam, but it seems to me that if you're so scared of me saying radical Islam because you think that all Muslims are immediately going to turn into terrorists if I say radical Islam, then you're the one who's Islamophobic, actually. Okay, next one. Okay, 6th slur that you're going to hear on campus a lot. You're microaggressing me. This one is my favorite, of course. I love you're microaggressing me. You're microaggressing me this is where I get to cite my catchphrase, my sitcom catchphrase, facts don't care about your feelings, right? You're microaggressing me, I don't care. Right? Microaggression is just a word that people use to mean they don't like what you're saying to them, so they get to punch you in the face. But we live in America, where we don't get to do that. Just because I'm saying something you don't like doesn't mean you get to punch me in the face. But the left, unfortunately, has really imbibed this entire philosophy. And I'll tell you a quick story just because it's a fun story. And since I'm up here on screen and no one can stop me, tough. So here's the story. So I don't know how many of you watch CNN Headline News. I'd ask for a show of hands, but I can't see you. I'm assuming 2 people are raising your hands. You're the entire constituency of CNN Headline News. So I'm asked to do, this is 8 months ago probably now, I'm asked to do CNN Headline News with Dr. Drew, which has less viewers significantly less viewers than people that are currently in this room. And so they asked me to come on, and they say, we're going to discuss the Caitlyn Jenner situation. This is right after Caitlyn Jenner has come out as a transgender woman, and we want you to come on to discuss your perspective. Now, my perspective is that women are women and men are men, and men can't become women because there's no magical machine that makes this happen. I've watched my wife give birth. Caitlyn Jenner can't do that, right? Caitlyn Jenner and my wife do not belong to the same sex. Okay, Caitlyn Jenner is a man, and my wife is a woman. So they asked me to come on, Dr. Drew asked me to come on his show. And right before we're about to go on air, his producer comes over to me and he says, I used to produce for Jerry Springer. And I should have figured things were about to go wildly wrong at that moment. But instead I said, okay. And he says, well, you know what we really need? We need some controversy. We really want you to we want you to speak your mind. I said, well, that's what I do for a living, so you're in luck. He said, we want you to speak your mind, say what you're going to say, and we don't shy away from controversy. All right, fine. So they put me on the stage, and it's me and, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 other members of the panel. So it's me versus 6 other people, and they're all on the other side. So it's 1 on 6, which makes it almost fair for them. And we're sitting there, and sitting next to me, they sit next to me, on my right, a guy named Zoe Tur. Now, Zoe Tur used to be Bob Tur, had the snip, and now considers himself a woman. He's a transgender woman. So he's sitting right next to me. And they're having this conversation about Caitlyn Jenner. This is when ESPN was giving Caitlyn Jenner the Hero of the Year award, which really waters down the definition of heroism since Normandy. In any case, the only conversation that's happening on the panel, they start the conversation, the only conversation is Caitlyn Jenner a regular Normandy-type hero, or maybe is Caitlyn Jenner an actual saint? Like, should we actually send Caitlyn Jenner to the Vatican? And then should Caitlyn Jenner be given not only sainthood, but immediately granted entrance to the pearly gates in heaven? Just how wonderful is Caitlyn Jenner? So they finally come around to me, and I say, I don't understand why society is engaging in mass delusion. And everybody kind of stops, and there's that moment, like the movie moment where the record kind of scratches and everything comes to a stop. And the guy sitting next to me, Zoe Tur, the transgender woman, he turns to me and he says, you don't know anything about science. And I said, well, I know something about chromosomes, and I know that every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body has a Y chromosome, except ironically for some of Caitlyn Jenner's sperm cells. And Zoe Tur turns to me, he said, you don't know anything about science, little boy, you don't know anything. And finally I said, well, what are your genetics, sir? And it was the sir that I think set him off. And he reaches over and he grabs me by the back of the neck on national TV. He takes the left hand and grabs me on the back of the neck by national TV. It's good TV. You can find it on YouTube later. And he says to me, if you don't cut that out, you're going home in an ambulance. And I thought to myself, well, I mean, first of all, that doesn't make any sense. You don't go home in an ambulance. But second of all, and this is what I actually said, this seems mildly inappropriate for a political conversation, right? And everybody on the panel turns on me, right? I'd microaggressed him. So I got everybody on the panel. This is so terrible. You deliberately said something to hurt Zoe's feelings. You deliberately said something to hurt Zoe's. And this is when I dropped originally the line, well, facts don't really care about your feelings, right? I don't care. I mean, that's not my job to care about your feelings. My job is to tell the truth, right? If we don't tell the truth, then we are not going to be set free. We will all be bound into this mentally ill society where we're supposed to respect each other's subjective versions of the truth rather than the actual truth. But they're all saying, okay, well, they don't mind that Zoe's grabbing people by the back of the neck and threatening to send them home in ambulances, which again makes no sense. What they really care about is that I use the word sir. And by the way, the threats continued. Zoe Tur, during the break, Zoe Tur turns to me and says, I'll see you in the parking lot. And I said, no, you won't. And Zoe Tur tweets at me later, I want to curb stomp you. Which I have to say, I thought all of this was deeply unladylike behavior. But the point of the story is this. When it comes to the left, the only thing that the left cares about with microaggressions is shutting you up. So you just refuse, and there's nothing they can do about it. Okay, final slur the left likes to use, and then we'll go to questions. You don't support Donald Trump, right? This is the one you're going to get, or you support Donald Trump. You get this one a lot now. You chalked Trump 2016, etc. Okay, first of all, you should, just to make a statement, you should chalk Trump 2016. Like, if you follow me at all, you know I think that Donald Trump is an absolute turd sandwich. I think that he's terrible. I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. that said, the response to you support Donald Trump should first of all be no, I don't. I mean, but beyond that, it should be, well, so what? I'm allowed to support whoever I want. And secondly, you support Hillary Clinton, for God's sake. I mean, you support a woman who's so corrupt she was the only first lady ever fingerprinted by the FBI. You support a woman who just tweeted yesterday that the FBI should be able to remove Second Amendment rights from people on FBI watch lists, but she's on an FBI investigation and she's running for president of the United States. Right? You support, this is the only point in favor of Donald Trump is that Hillary Clinton is on the other side of the aisle. So the fact that you support Donald Trump, there's a very easy response to that, which is, right, and you guys support Hillary Clinton. We chose the two worst people in America to run against each other, so you really don't have a lot of legs to stand on here. So those are my quick tips for fighting off some of the leftist slurs, and those are the ones you're going to hear most often. And now I'm happy to take questions. Thanks so much.
Hi, Ben. I just want to start. I'm
Howdy.
like freaking out because I'm a huge fan of you. I listen to you every day, so thank you for everything you do too. First, I'm going to start with on campus, I encounter a lot of people who have really just stupid arguments. My best friend, she's not my best friend, but she's a friend I see on a regular basis. She is a pro-abortion, and she says that although baby murder isn't unethical, circumcision is. When the left gives you arguments like this, how do you handle people who inherently contradict themselves?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that you have to do, I mean, the nice thing is if you're going to contradict yourself, that gives you an immediate opening, right? I mean, spotting contradictions in a person's argument is the first step toward defeating the argument. With a person like this, I hope that there's a crowd around because, again, the only purpose of the conversation is to humiliate this person as badly as possible in front of as many people as possible. It's legitimately the only purpose. But for a person who says things like that, the nice thing is that hypocrisy is easy to point out. So you're very, very concerned about foreskins being cut off, but not heads being cut off, right? It seems like I'd be more concerned with more flesh being cut off rather than less, just on a basic level. Also, it turns out that cutting off the foreskin, I can testify from personal experience because I now have 2 children. It does not prevent the production of children. It turns out that killing children prevents the production of children. So I'm not sure what you're...
Hi, Ben.
It's amazing for the left how bodily integrity starts only the minute that the mother feels like it should start, right? It's subjectively defined life. The evil of abortion is truly astonishing to me. The fact that the left will openly now make the argument, this is something new, even in my lifetime. 10, 15 years ago, they used to say safe, legal, and rare. They at least used to pretend they cared about abortion as a moral issue. Now they just say, oh, it's a great thing. And they say that human beings can be subjectively defined, that whenever a woman feels like a baby becomes a baby, then it becomes a baby, right? When Princess Catherine, when Princess Kate, when she was pregnant, every headline in the world was Princess Kate pregnant with baby, right? It wasn't Princess Kate pregnant with cluster of cells that may or may not be a child depending on her feelings today, right? And same thing with Chelsea Clinton. We all have to celebrate Chelsea Clinton is pregnant, she's having a baby. Or when Chelsea Clinton was pregnant, we couldn't. It's astonishing to me that no Republican candidate just said it to Hillary Clinton. I'm very happy for you that you're about to have a grandchild. That's very exciting. Aren't you excited about it? Let Hillary say yes, and then say, why are you so excited about it? What if Chelsea decides to kill it tomorrow? You okay with that? And then just watch Hillary stand there on her cankles. So I think that there's plenty of material here. The abortion debate is actually a really easy one. You either believe that's a life or you don't. If you don't believe it's a life, you believe it's a bundle of cells. If you believe that's a bundle of cells, you're a bundle of cells. Your life is meaningless. So, this debate. This debate is not hard. You just have to take a hard position, not to back off of it, on behalf of sensitivity, because the left's usual argument to this is, well, but you can't say anything. Now, you guys are lucky, right? I mean, you're women, so you get to talk about abortion. For me, thanks to modern politics, I also have a way out. I just identify as a woman when I talk about abortion. And this makes things really easy for me. So for the past 5 minutes, I've been a woman, and boy, ladies, I feel your pain. I'm with you. The shoes are too expensive. Okay, now we're done with that, and I'm back to being a man. So next question.
Hi, Ben. Hi, Ben. Is this on?
Howdy.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, my name's Anna White, and I was the first one to start out the tweet hashtag Get Ben to Young Women's Leadership
Yeah, thank you. I
Summit.
appreciate it.
I have been following you for quite a while now, and I just want to say I greatly appreciate all you do for conservatism and what you do to really push against the left and just keep the ideals and values that made America great.
Well, thank you.
My question is, what is the best piece of advice you would give to young conservatives as the left is dominating the culture and continues to win in the political sphere, and the right has seemingly rejected conservatism as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult time. I have to say that even for people like me who are in the fight every single day, it's a depressing time to wake up in the morning and do politics, because you're seeing the left obviously the left is the left, and you expect the left to be the left. You're seeing people on the right who are starting to embrace this kind of vision of ad hoc policy from a strong man that really is upsetting to me. All I can say is stick with your principles and walk toward the fire, because your principles are timeless. Your principles aren't going anywhere, right? You can compromise them in order to get somebody elected. And as long as you're willing to acknowledge that that's what's going on, that's okay. I mean, I've said many times with regard to, for example, Trump, I've said, I totally understand the argument. I'm voting for Trump just to stop Hillary. I may not think that the argument works totally. I may not vote for Trump because I think that Trump will do long-term damage to conservatism as people fall in line behind him. But that said, as long as you stick to your values and you make clear what your values are and you don't compromise those for anybody, it's going to be hard for anybody to hold you to a different standard. Because the most damaging thing that anybody can hit you with in American society now, aside from racism, is hypocrisy. This is the argument they like to use on you, is you say you hold these values, but you do X. You say you hold these values, but you're willing to stand for Y. Well, you know, if you're not willing to stand for it, no matter who it comes from, then you're never going to have to worry about sleeping well at night. One thing is true. You know, the state of the country may keep me up at night, but the state of my values doesn't keep me up. And I don't think it should keep conservatives up at night. I think that if leftists had a brain, a moral sense, or a heart, then their values and the impact of their policies would keep them up at night. Obviously, they have none of those three, so it makes it sort of difficult for them.
Hi, Ben. So you briefly talked about white privilege, and so what is your response to the recent cases of Brock Turner and affluenza cases?
I'm sorry, the last part of the question I missed. The recent cases of
Brock Turner and affluenza, the white kid that killed people while drunk in a car crash.
Okay, I have to say I haven't really followed that case very closely, so I'm going to have to plead ignorance on that one.
Okay.
You know, so I'm not going to comment on that specifically. All I can say is that criminal justice sentencing, there's a lot of unjust sentencing that happens across racial boundaries, and you have to see generally. Maybe this was a case of a bad judge, maybe it was a case of a bad jury. That does happen, but as a general rule, the fact is that the criminal justice system tends to hand out the same sentences to the same sorts of people. There are always exceptions to the rule, and we should call out exceptions when we see them. I don't know this case, so I can't tell you whether it's an exception.
Hi, Ben. My name's Marlena, and I'm also a member of YAF. And my friend Mark was actually the one that held the event at Cal State for you, Mark.
Oh, wow.
And
well, thank you.
Yeah, and so I was just wondering.
Round of applause, by the way, round of applause for the students at Cal State who stood up to an almost riot just to have me speak.
And I was just wondering if you could tell the interesting story of what happened at Cal State to the audience.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Actually, I skipped my macro econ exam just to watch that live because I wasn't able to go there in person. But and also if there's any update on the Cal State suit that you're filing against them.
Sure. Yeah, so basically for people who missed it, back in February, and right now I'm broadcasting from an office at the Daily Wire, and people at the office were with me at this event, so they know what I'm saying is true. So we were asked to speak at Cal State by the Young America's Foundation group on campus. This is several weeks in advance, and 3 days before I was slated to speak, the president of the university, William Covino, he came out and he just canceled it. He said, we're not doing this speech. The speech threatens our values of diversity, right? It threatens their values of diversity to have the only Republican in a 50-mile radius speak on the campus. So I considered it, and then I told him that he could stick it where the sun don't shine. I was coming anyway, and the YAF students, you know, the YAF students, some of whom were apparently Turning Point folks also, they stood up and they said, yeah, let's do this thing. And so we just went ahead with the event, and about an hour and a half before the event, the university backed down and they said, we'll provide the protection that's necessary for this event to go forward. It'll be fine. So I'm in the car and I start getting calls from people on the ground that things are insane, that there are hundreds of students who have congregated outside, that they're pushing around, beating up people trying to get in, that they've blockaded all of the entrances to prevent anybody from getting in, that they're screaming and shouting and hurting people, that there are police, there are police helicopters and cop cars everywhere. And I figured, okay, well, this is a normal Tuesday. So I go down there with full security, and we get there, and the cops have to smuggle me in through a back door. They were smuggling the students in 2 by 2 through a back door also. So by the end of the speech, the room was still only half full. They said I could wait there for like 2-3 hours so they could fill it up. But we had, I think, 50,000 people simultaneously watching online. And so I said, okay, we'll start this thing. So we do the speech. About 5 minutes in, the lefties pull the fire alarm. All of this, by the way, egged on by the administration, egged on by professors, and the police stand by and allow this to go on. It's a violation of fire code. It's a violation of safety codes, obviously, to block all of the doorways. I finally finish, and I had my adrenaline going, and I said to all the kids, okay, you guys want to go out there, and let's go out there and talk to these people. At that point, I said, let me go talk to security. I went backstage, and the police said, no, this is something you will not do. And they said, we can protect you, but we can't protect any of the students who come out with you. And even you, the first guy won't get you, the second guy won't get you, but the third guy will probably get you. But we can't protect any of the students who come out with you. I figured, okay, I don't want anybody really getting hurt out there because I walk out there. I don't want this turning into a full-scale riot. So they smuggled me out with 20 uniformed officers surrounding me. They smuggled me into a different building and then smuggled me into a car, and then had a couple of motorcycle cops, lights blaring, escort me off campus like a third world dictator, which was, interesting. The only time in my life I felt like Muammar Gaddafi. In any case, they basically held the students hostage inside for 15 minutes, and then the police let it be known I was gone. The students dissipated, and they marched directly to the president's office to demand that he resign. So we filed a lawsuit. Young America's Foundation has, some of the students have, and I have. We filed a lawsuit based on violation of First Amendment freedoms against the university and the president of the university, because you do not get to cancel events just because you don't like the political viewpoint of the person who is speaking there. And you certainly don't get to tell the police to stand by while acts of violence are committed against people who just want to go and hear a lecture from somebody who is, by the way, a mainstream conservative. So this is, the lawsuit is moving ahead. I know we filed our motions. I think they have a certain amount of time to respond, and we'll see how it goes.
Hey Ben, my name's Raquel. I'm a really big fan. I actually made you a sign, but you can't really see it. And it says Shapiro's my hero. And it has like American flag in the background. It's on Twitter if you want to check it out.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
But I guess my question is that I made a personal choice not to vote for Donald Trump because I don't think he's a conservative, and I think he's going to push the Republican Party significantly more to the left. So I guess my question is, what do you suggest doing, or who do you suggest that I vote for? Yeah, I made that in a hotel room with lots of glitter. I think it's still a little wet, so I don't know.
So I'm sorry, I missed the last part of the question. I was distracted because someone was holding up this sign.
I guess my question is, what do you suggest I do, or who do you suggest I vote for instead?
Okay, so my plan right now is to not vote at the top of the ticket and to vote down ticket and get the vote out for Senate and House races, because that's really the hope for conservatism right now. It doesn't reside in Donald Trump. Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever I speak to older groups, whenever I speak to people who are 50 and above in the Republican Party, and I say that I'm not voting for Trump, people lose their minds. Whenever I speak to people who are 50 and under, people totally get why you're not voting for Donald Trump. The reason, I think, is because people who are younger tend to have a longer field of vision, right? People who are our age and younger, I mean, you guys are all junior to me, but I'm only 32. We see 40 years down the line the impact of getting behind a guy who says things that are racist, like the Mexican judge comment, who says things that cater to the alt-right white supremacists by his refusal to condemn the KKK, or his refusal to condemn people who are making anti-Semitic comments against reporters and anti-Semitic death threats. We look at the things that Donald Trump has said about women, which are absolutely horrifying and terrible. And we say we can't be a part of this. And if we are a part of this, then it's going to redound negatively on the Republican brand and on the conservative brand. We see that Donald Trump, if you're elected president, the party follows him into an ad hoc totalitarianism that is really ugly. If he's not elected, then presumably in 4 years we can come back and try again with somebody who's actually a conservative and believes in American values, not just this sort of nationalist populism that Trump is espousing. When I say that to young people, they get it. When I say it to people above the age of 50, they really don't get it at all. They say, okay, well, we only have 2 years until the country collapses. If we only have 2 years until the country collapses and your only hope to save the country is Donald J. Trump, let me suggest to you that we are absolutely fundamentally screwed. If that's really, if that's where we are in America right now, is that the only one who can save us is a stubby-fingered, Cheeto-faced orange God King, then I think that we have bigger problems than this particular election cycle. Which, by the way, is true. I do think we have bigger problems than this particular election cycle, which is why I'm not willing to hand over the only vehicle for conservatism to a guy who is not only not conservative, but is not even a decent human being. I mean, Donald Trump is a legitimately bad guy, and he makes that clear pretty much every day. So I think that what we do at the top of the ticket, I was really hoping that when there was an announcement David French might run, I was excited about that just because, not because David French was going to win, but because it gave me a home for my vote. But, if I can't find somebody to vote for, I'm sick of saying yes to candidates that I disagree with just to defeat the worst available alternative. And I'm certainly not going to do that for a guy who gave money to the worst available alternative repeatedly. Right? So my feeling about Trump is this. Right, what the Republican Party constantly does, because it's a machine for victory, but it's not a machine for conservatism. What they constantly do is they pick the worst available alternative, and then they say, okay, well, at least he's better than X. At least Romney is better than Obama, and Romney was leagues better than Trump. At least Romney is better than Obama. At least McCain is better than Obama. At least Trump is better than Hillary. If we never say no, we're not going to get the opportunity to ever say yes to a candidate that we like. All that's going to happen is that the corrupt primary processes, and it is corrupt, but not for the reasons Trump says it's corrupt. It's corrupt because a district in New York carries precisely the same amount of weight as a district in Alabama. So you can have a district in New York that has 5,000 Republican voters and a district in Alabama that has 200,000 Republican voters, and they carry exactly the same number of votes in the delegate system, right? It's a system that has to be corrected. Unless that system is corrected, unless people are willing to say no to candidates like Donald Trump, I think that it's going to be very difficult to say yes to good candidates in the future. You can see it right now, how many conservatives are selling their soul, not just to back Trump, which, again, I say that's I can understand, but to actually defend some of the indefensible things that Trump does and says. And they are indefensible. I'm sorry. It's indefensible when Donald Trump attacks a judge based on his ethnicity. It's indefensible when Donald Trump said back in the 1980s that women ought to be treated like bleep. It's indefensible when Donald Trump says that when Donald Trump makes breast jokes about his infant daughter. I'm sorry, these things are not, I didn't think I was living in a world where I was going to be called upon as a moral, decent human being to defend him from these charges. If you don't want to defend him and say, okay, yeah, he's a schmuck, but at least he's not Hillary, that's fair. But the enthusiasm for Trump is something that actually I think is corrupting.
Hi, Ben. You give me hope that one day I'll find a nice Jewish boy that's also a Republican.
Well, I do shidduchim. I do fix-ups. So if you send me your information, I know a bunch of nice Jewish boys who are looking for a nice Jewish girl. We can make this happen. The Shapiro dating service. And by the way, quick note to all you ladies in terms of unsolicited dating advice for all of you, because now I have my open window to do it. Unsolicited dating advice. Do not date leftists. Don't do it. Don't do it. Date people.
And when you do, you get bupkis for arguments. So I'm going to ask you about BDS movements are big on college campuses, and what can we do to fight it, especially with all this anti-Israel rhetoric going around?
Yeah, so the BDS movement, for people who haven't followed this, it's boycott, divestment, sanctions against Israel. And the idea is that universities across the country should condemn Israel by refusing to engage in business with Israel. And the way to fight this is to be as aggressive as possible. You may have noticed I'm not a shrinking violet. So being aggressive is sort of what I recommend. The way that I did this at UCLA was there was a BDS hearing, and a bunch of Palestinians and allies showed up, and a bunch of Jews showed up, and I didn't think the Jews were making a great case for their and not just Jews, a lot of pro-Israel people who are not Jewish showed up, and they were all given minutes to speak a piece. And the Palestinians would say things like, well, I remember when my brother was in Palestine and he was pulled over by the Israelis and they raped him with a gun. Right? I mean, it was really stuff like that. And the Jews would then get up and they'd say, wait, that never happened. What are you talking about? The problem is, once you engage in that argument where you say, oh, Israel's democratic, Israel's wonderful, you've lost the argument. Again, for the same reason that when someone says you're a racist and you say, let me explain why I'm not, you've lost the argument. If somebody says Israel's evil and you say, let me explain all the reasons Israel isn't evil, you've lost the argument, because the entire center of the argument has shifted to, is Israel evil or not? The proper response is the only people who are talking about boycotting Israel over boycotting Iran, over boycotting Saudi Arabia, over boycotting Pakistan, over boycotting places that force women into child marriages and clitorectomies, right? The only people who are trying to crack on the only free and independent country in the Middle East that's democratic and has women's rights and gay rights and all the rest of the rights that we actually care about, the only state that's like that is Israel. Why are you picking on Israel? There's only one reason: you hate Jews. It's the only reason that you would do this. Legitimately the only reason. And by the way, not just because you hate Jews, but also because you hate Western civilization, because these are the same people. When they tried BDS on the West Coast, they passed it at some of the UCs. They passed a simultaneous resolution to boycott, divest, and sanction the United States because the United States engages in human rights violations, which makes things really awkward. It's very difficult to sit in the United States and boycott the United States. I don't know if they had hovercraft or what. Like, they were sitting on the soil of the United States while they were doing this. But the only way to do this is to be very aggressive and say, look, there's only one reason you're doing this. The only reason you're doing this is because you hate Jews, you hate Western civilization. If you didn't, then you'd be fighting alongside us to take out the bad guys as opposed to targeting the good guys.
Hey Ben, my name's Elisa, and I love the information you put out, so thank you for speaking the truth with such humor. You actually follow me on Twitter and Instagram, which is like super flattering, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
My question for you is, we've had some really great speakers the last couple of days, and I don't want to undermine that, but most of them have been telling us that even though they despise Donald Trump, that we still should vote for him because of the Supreme Court, because of those nominations. And I just kind of want to know what your reasoning behind that is and why you wouldn't.
I mean, as I've said, I think the reason not to vote for Donald Trump is because you think he's going to do more long-term damage to conservatism than he will do short-term benefit for conservatism. So if your timeline is just here's the way that I've put it to people who ask this question typically. If you think that the American train has one more stop left, right? We have one more stop before perdition, and it's either going to stop in Hillary Town or it's going to stop in Trump Town. Then maybe you prefer Trump Town. Maybe you think that Trump Town is better than Hillary Town. I don't think that's the last stop on the American train. If if Barack Obama drove the country, we were going at 30 miles an hour toward a cliff before Obama. Obama took the pedal and he rammed it through the metal all the way down to the floor, Fred Flintstone style. And he proceeded to take us up to 90 miles an hour toward the cliff. So now we're headed 90 miles an hour toward the cliff. Hillary will push it down even further, and we'll be moving 115 toward the cliff. Donald Trump, he's going to push it a little bit. We'll head at the cliff toward 100. But what Trump does that Hillary does not is he rips out the reverse gear. Because remember, that car can only go in reverse if it's possible for a conservative to put it into reverse. And the only way a conservative can put the conservative movement into reverse, the only way that Republicans can use conservatism to save the country, is if conservatism is still a viable option. The reason that this is not going to work is for the same reason. The reason this isn't going to work is the same reason that it didn't work in California. I'm from California, and I can't even get the hell out of here to Texas. So I can't, I'm in California, and the governor of California for a while was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was an early backer of Schwarzenegger, specifically for many of the reasons people are backing Trump. And I said, okay, better to have a Republican than a Democrat. He won't be as bad as Cruz Bustamante, who's running against him. Sure, he's not a conservative, but he's better than the alternative. He came in, he proceeded to govern like a mainstream leftist, and then people didn't like him, so they voted in Jerry Brown. And so now we have Jerry Brown, and he's going to be the governor of the state long beyond his death. Jerry Brown is going to be wheeled out like a skeleton from Weekend at Bernie's, and they're going to staple a wig to his head, and they're going to make him the governor of the state in perpetuity. And that's because conservatives in the state handed over leadership to somebody who wasn't conservative. There are two rules that you can abide by here. One is the supposed William F. Buckley rule, that you vote for the most conservative guy who can win, right? At this point, only Trump can win. The other rule is what they call the Alexander Hamilton rule, and that is if we are going to have an enemy in a high place, at least let it be someone we can call an enemy. Because you see how George W. Bush, you're on campus. How many times a day when you're arguing politics does someone bring up, well, you guys backed George W. Bush and he was terrible? 10, 15? Right? George W. Bush, because people backed him all the way to the hilt, we're now attached to all of George W. Bush's policies. It'll be much worse with Trump, because at least George W. Bush was an honorable man fighting an honorable war. Donald Trump is a dishonorable man who doesn't even know what war he's fighting. I mean, for goodness sake, Donald Trump could declare nuclear war because he got syphilis from a hooker.
Hi, Ben. My name is Kat. Today's my birthday. And
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you, you just mentioned that you're from California and I'm from New York. So obviously it's really hard to be bred in a blue state. And I was just wondering if you had any advice for getting involved in a state that's so strongly blue.
Yeah, I mean, in getting involved, here's the nice thing about being a conservative in New York or California. You can easily be the president of the Republican Party in either of those states just by declaring yourself eligible. So that's the good So that's the good news. The bad news is there's like 3 of us, right? But what that means is that we ought to be putting our efforts elsewhere. I think that the biggest mistake that conservatives make in California and New York particularly is that they focus on fiscal issues. I actually think there's a mistake for conservatives across the country. If conservatives in California and New York want to win, they have to go back to the reason Rudy Giuliani won in New York or Richard Riordan won in Los Angeles, and that is crime. Meaning that if you want to get, I'll get to the grassroots advice in a moment. If you actually want to run and win in California or New York, you have to run on crime. Not education or funding or any of that kind of stuff. It's crime only, because it turns out that, particularly, by the way, ladies are interested in voting on crime. Even lefty women tend to vote more conservative because of crime issues. So that's kind of issue point number 1. As far as grassroots involvement, what I would say is you're obviously doing a good job just by getting involved with Turning Point, because if you're not involved in a grassroots organization that has national scope, it's very difficult to build up on the local level either. California is a lost cause until people realize just how bad things are here. New York is sort of the same. But the nice thing about leftism is that leftism corrupts itself and destroys itself. It just takes a little while to do it. So they're going to need people here who have consolidated a base and are ready to pick up the pieces when people realize that this vessel is broken.
One final question.
Thank you for joining us, Ben. I made you a sign also. It says, Ben is Bay Facts, don't care about your feelings. I have a question. Come November, should Hillary Clinton be president-elect, what should we, as conservatives, Republicans, presumably people with common sense, do when she picks 3 to 5 Supreme Court justices, rams Planned Parenthood down our throats, bans guns, and tries to radically change our country?
Yes. Okay. So the Supreme Court question is a good one. If Hillary Clinton is the president-elect, so I asked this question to Mitch McConnell on one of my radio shows, and the question was very simple. Why do you think that you no longer have a responsibility to hold up judicial nominees of Hillary? She said that she'll hold up. He said that he'll hold up Obama's judicial nominee. Why won't you do that if Hillary's president? He said, well, we can't have this continue forever. We can't have this continue forever that there aren't enough justices on the Supreme Court. First of all, the Constitution only suggests 6. But beyond that, so what? So what? So the Supreme Court doesn't do anything. I prefer to live in a country where the Supreme Court doesn't do anything lately. So the idea that Republicans should stop and just kind of give whoever Hillary appoints a vote, I think that's a silly thing. I mean, the Senate still has an advice consent rule and doesn't end just because Hillary Clinton is president of the United States. Now, here's the legal point about the Supreme Court that's actually kind of important. The fact is, the Supreme Court tends not to be the major driver in American policy. So the gay marriage battle was lost long before the Supreme Court declared in Obergefell that it was lost. The Supreme Court tends to there's a book by a guy named Gerald Rosenberg called The Hallowed Hope about how the Supreme Court really doesn't create trends, it sort of follows them, and it's not really that effective. The fact is that you're seeing it on a national level. President Obama just issued an executive order, for example, about making sure that there are transgender bathrooms for school children. And the Kansas State Board of Education told him to go stick it, right? What is he going to do? Is he going to march troops into Kansas to make sure that there's a 3rd bathroom for boys who think they're girls? Of course not. It's not going to happen. The real resistance to federal tyranny is going to come at the state level. It's not going to come via the Supreme Court. Listen, I mourned like everybody else when Justice Scalia died. It felt like a punch in the stomach, not just because I think he was a great man, but also because he was a great jurist and maybe the last bastion of conservatism on the court. By the way, my own personal perspective is that Clarence Thomas is a better justice than Scalia. But all of that said, I don't think that the Supreme Court is the be-all, end-all. And I think if you think that it is, then you should look at the development of the Supreme Court from the Warren era to the Rehnquist era, right? Lots and lots of bad decisions. The fact is that we've come to the point of constitutional crisis before. We'll come to it again. And I think that things are going to get very heated regardless of where the Supreme Court stands in short order. That said, look, it's a terrible situation. I don't trust either Hillary or Trump, obviously, with the Supreme Court nominee. This is the only good argument, really the only good argument for Trump is maybe he'll do better on the Supreme Court nominees. I tend to doubt that. I think that if Trump is the president, I think he'll likely have a minority Senate And I think if he has a minority Senate, then what he'll do is he'll just put up somebody who has, as he says, a very good brain. And it won't matter if that person's conservative or not. He'll just push that person through. The person will get 97 votes, and it'll be David Souter. So it's a bad situation all around, which is to say, get organized on the state level and elect governors who are willing to tell the federal government to stick it. Because I don't think that we live in a country where the federal government is going to deploy troops to integrate transgender bathrooms. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. And again, Pardis is standing out there. If you want a signed, personalized photo, then Pardis will take all your information and come back to LA, and I'll spend all day signing things. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.